The deadline has come and gone for any and all legislation to be considered in its House of Origin during the first session of the 59th Legislature. And that means it's been a very busy week for lawmakers and for our Capitol correspondent Jason Doyle, who joins us now with more on the tax man and tax plans. Jason.
Indeed, it has been a busy week for legislators who have been considering all kinds of bills, and that includes possible changes to the taxes we pay to fund state services.
House Bill 1954 by McCall of the House, an act relating to revenue and taxation.
House Speaker Charles McCall is trying to cut Oklahoma's income tax through House Bill 1954.
I'm looking to flatten the tax rate in the state of Oklahoma and cut it temporarily for 2 years by 0.5%.
Currently, Oklahoma's income tax rate is 4.75%. McCall's cut would bring that down to 4.25%. McCall's tax cut measure did raise some concerns by House Democrats when the bill hit the House floor Wednesday evening.
With the reduction that would occur, approximately how much money would that amount to?
The fiscal impact shows 2023 nothing, 2024 182.2 million, 2025 464.8 million. Less money than we gave to Ocean.
House Floor Leader John Eccles, who presented McCall's income tax bill, is referring to Project Ocean, the nearly $700 million incentive package that failed to attract Panasonic and Volkswagen to build a mega factory in Pryor. While incentive packages occasionally do land a new employer, McCall contends making sure our tax rates are attractive is a long-range plan to entice businesses to locate and expand in Oklahoma. That's why lawmakers on both sides of the rotunda are working on tax reform measures.
When we look to entities like the Tax Foundation, which are a national nonpartisan group that study and look at each state's tax structure and then rank us in comparison to one another, we're number 23 in the country currently. And in our region, we're only ahead of Kansas and Arkansas by just a little bit. 1 or 2 positions.
While Republicans are looking at several measures to reform all kinds of taxes, Democrats are concerned that tax cuts will narrow revenues at a time when the legislature is considering increasing spending on things like education and infrastructure.
Just 6 years ago, the state was in a $1.5 billion revenue failure due to failed trickle-down economics. Schools across the state went to 4-day school weeks, teachers were laid off, and I happened to be one of them. It's why I ran for office. I ran to make sure that future teachers and students wouldn't have to suffer the consequences of unsound tax policy in this building.
Republicans point to the savings which have been built up since the last major revenue downturn and made possible due to tax increases passed in 2018.
You got $4 billion in savings in the state of Oklahoma right now. Oklahomans are being overtaxed. Government is making a profit. This is good policy. We need to keep the conversation alive.
McCall's tax cut plan isn't the only income tax measure to be passed by the House this week.
Bill 2285 by LePac of the House and Rader of the Senate, an act relating to revenue and taxation.
A lot of people want to call it flat tax rate. It's a single tax rate of 4.5%. We raise the standard deduction to care for those lower incomes and eliminate all those brackets that really are on the lower end of our tax scale. It eliminates the marriage penalty.
House Bill 2285 also contains a series of triggers that will further lower the income tax rate when revenues increase.
A series of triggers for future 0.25% tax cuts. And if every one of them came in over a period of time, we would end up at a 2.75% single rate for personal income tax.
This tax restructure is much like one approved in 2014, which also had a set of triggers lowering the income tax rate, but it eventually caused a revenue failure 4 years later. LePac's bill takes a much more cautious approach by making sure that a revenue downturn followed by a small uptick while the state is recovering doesn't cause another issue.
Based on a revenue threshold, general revenues, and every time you trigger a tax cut, then you raise the threshold. So we don't have what we had several years ago when we, after a big economic downturn, a slight growth in revenue triggered a tax cut maybe at not such a great time.
The passage of LePac's bill and McCall's measure sets the stage for further discussion about what kinds of tax cuts and reforms the legislature will end up sending to Governor Stitt. In fact, bills dealing with several facets of state revenues are being considered.
We're also looking at eliminating the franchise tax, eliminating the marriage penalty. On the personal side, we're also looking at eliminating the throwback rule in the business sector. And if we were to advance a package of these 5 bills, we would not only help the people of the state of Oklahoma with inflation relief, we could also move ourselves into the top 10 overall in the country in our tax structure.
That leads to another popular tax cut idea, which has been around for a couple of years, but just hasn't crossed the finish line at the Capitol.
It is the suspension of the state portion of sales tax on groceries.
The House has a version of the grocery tax this year that extends a moratorium for 2 years on the state's portion of the grocery tax.
House Bill 1955 does not touch the taxes on groceries levied by cities and counties. The grocery tax cut would have a time limit as well.
It gives some relief to the people of the state of Oklahoma for a 2-year period. At that time, the legislature could determine whether it wants to extend it permanently, do away with it.
The House grocery tax cut won bipartisan support as members sent it to the Oklahoma Senate.
88 ayes, 7 nay.
The Senate has been working on its own slate of tax proposals, which will soon come to the House.
And at the end of the day, negotiations with the Senate and with the governor, hopefully I expect that we will land on one of these plans.
Right before the deadline on Thursday, the House did pass Speaker McCall's flat tax bill. That bill currently does not have a Senate author yet, so its future is still unclear.